Thanks for the introduction. Okay. Yeah, I'm really glad to be here. The Slack channel I must say, the Slack channel has definitely helped me a lot. Especially, I mean, I joined a little bit late, but it did help me through the visa process and stuff. So I'm glad I got some help over there, and I'm glad I'm able to share some of my journey so that it can help other people. So just a disclaimer, I'm not an immigration attorney, so I'm also learning as the process is going on. I still have a lot to learn, but I'm happy to be here to be able to share some of my journey. So let me share my screen. Okay, so can you all see my screen?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so just a little bit about me. As Aditi mentioned, so I'm a senior AI scientist at a startup company called Picture Health. This company was founded in 2021, so it's relatively very new. So I was actually the fourth employee of the company, so it's fairly new. So I didn't know when I joined the company, I didn't know how my immigration journey would going to be, but one advantage that I had was this was a company which was spun out of Case Western Reserve University at the early stages. So it was my own advisor who started this company. So I had I had full confidence in him that he would help me with the immigration journey. So I did my PhD before joining Picture Health. I did my PhD in biomedical engineering, and as Aditi mentioned, I did my undergrad and master's in electrical engineering, electronics and communication engineering in India. And before my PhD, I worked as a senior research engineer in Philips Research in India, post-masters. So basically, right now I have about 2 years of pre-doctoral experience and 2 years of post-doctoral experience. And I applied to O1 last August. I'm sorry, this should have been 2023. So I applied to O1 last August and got it approved in the September. So I'll be sharing my entire journey of the O1. Yeah, please stop me at any time if you'd like, if you have any specific questions, or we could also answer questions at the end, as Aditi mentioned. So this is my complete timeline. I defended my PhD on May 2022 and immediately joined Picture Health, and I was an OPT from then. And just to point out that I was the first international candidate within the company. So I had to do my own research in terms of like exploring options for the visas. So I started exploring some of the options. One of the basic option is the H-1B, and then I also heard from other people that if we are in the field of research, we could also apply for O1. So I started asking some of my colleagues and also my ex-PhD candidates who had already applied to some or the other kind of visa. And after seeking multiple opinions, I got my profile evaluated and I decided to go with the O1 route. I think the main advantage over here is that you might have heard about the H-1B. It's getting more difficult and difficult because of the lottery process. So if your profile is up to a mark where it satisfies the O1 criteria, it's a huge advantage of not falling into that trap of the lotteries. So that's the biggest advantage of the O1. So I decided to go in that route. So after getting my profile evaluated, I started with the application. I was suggested to go ahead with the Chen immigration attorneys. So they got my profile evaluated and I started the process. And on February 2023, I put a hold in the application because my OPT was ending in May. And it was a little bit risky to apply for O1 because what if it kind of takes more time and I don't have a visa until I get the approval. So I decided to put a hold on that. Decided to first apply for the STEM OPT and wait until it fully get processed. So I got my OPT, STEM OPT approval on April 2023, and then I reconvened my application. The application took a little bit of time because there were a lot of things which had to be done. STEM immigration attorneys were very patient with me, and finally they completed the application on August 2023, and then we filed it with a premium processing. So we got the decision very quickly within 15 days. I primarily chose premium processing because I had to go to a conference for international travel, which included international travel, and it kind of helped me to get the approval faster. So these are the O1A criteria. I'm not going to be discussing all of them in detail, but you can definitely find these criteria within the USCIS websites. USCIS website. So basically, we have to fulfill 3 out of these 8 criteria to be able to apply for O1 and get it approved. So I'll be specifically talking about the 3 criteria that the attorneys filed in my case, and would be diving a little bit more deeper into that to kind of share what insights I got from these and what we put in the petition.
Amol,
So yeah,
but like your screen is showing in presentation mode. So if you want to make it full screen, that'd be good.
oh, okay. Sorry about that. Is this okay?
It's still like showing all the slides.
So
Yeah,
it's showing in the
press F5.
presentation mode?
Yeah, press F5, it will go to presentation.
Oh, but it's still showing.
It's still that, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me.
Yeah, once you go to full screen, I think you have to swap the displays.
Yeah, I thought I didn't have another display. Let me. Okay, let me try to share my small screen itself. Okay, so is this visible
Now it's
properly
good.
right now?
Yeah. Now it's good.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so these are the 3 out of those 8 criteria we applied to. So the first one is the original scientific or scholarly contributions to the major significance in the field. And the second one is the authorship of scholarly articles. And the third one is kind of judging others' work, or in this case, which I'd be talking more in terms of like reviewing other papers. So the first criteria, which involves original scientific or scholarly contributions of major significance in the field, basically this covers most of the publications and the projects that I had been involved in. So at the time of filing, I had about 3 first author journal publications and 2 co-author journal publications, and about 3 different peer-reviewed conference publications. And another advantage that I had is some of my publications were featured in newspapers and magazines, which actually helped me build my case. So the way we use this criteria was that we divided into projects, and the papers associated with each projects were listed in the respective section. So for each of these projects, a brief summary was provided, and all the papers in the projects, we indicated the impact factor, journal rankings, etc., to highlight what was good about each of those publications. And I think one of the major factor over here is to kind of explain how other people have used the published work. So you'll have to look at the citations, and you'll have to see like what they've written about your article and stuff. So some suggestions, especially for this criteria, was that I was kind of fortunate to get my articles featured in newspapers and magazines, but I was fortunate enough to be contacted on behalf of these articles itself. But if not, I would suggest to kind of like promote your published article in social media platforms so that you would increase your chances of being featured in one of the in some of these platforms. And then and then one more suggestion is that you could start searching and give importance to something called independent citations. Independent citations are something where some of the works that have, some of the citations that have cited your work outside your co-authorship network. So this would get more weightage rather than someone from your co-author network citing your article themselves. And then on top of that, explaining how other people have used or cited your published work. And then for the criteria too, the authorship of scholarly articles. This is primarily focused on publications where this was primarily focused on the publications where I was the first author, and some of the oral presentations where some of the conference publications which resulted in oral publications. So in this section, specifically providing details about the journals themselves, showing their impact factor ranking and things like that, and kind of help build the case, and focusing on the citations and how that compares to others in the same field. So some of the suggestions here is I suggest everyone to start planning early in terms of the publications, and as all of you know, a Google Scholar profile is definitely a must. And if you're especially working in the field of AI and medicine, then you can target conferences and journals in both the fields, specifically computer science and medicine. So you're in an advantage because you can target like conferences in two different complete streams over here, which will definitely help you in terms of getting some publications and citations. And so I did have some conference abstracts, but which were only led to poster presentations, which my immigration attorneys mentioned that they wouldn't add any weightage, so I did not include them. Only abstract presentations with oral presentations were included in the petition. Additionally, like papers with no citations were just listed. We didn't talk about them a lot because they mentioned they might not have a huge impact in meeting the requirements of the criteria. So I would suggest that it's more important to have high impact publications in high impact journals rather than multiple low impact ones, because you'll have higher chances of them getting cited rather than low impact publications. So the final criteria was participation on a panel individually or judge of others' work of others. Basically, this is reviewing other articles. At the time of filing, I had reviewed about 13 journal papers. Most of them had impact factor of about 4 to 5, while a couple of them had greater than 10 impact factor. So this is a very straightforward criteria. I would suggest start contacting your, if you're doing PhD or master's in research, I would suggest contacting your own advisors. They usually receive tons of papers for review, so they can definitely forward them your way. Or if you have published an article in a specific journal, you could always go and reach out to those editors where showing your interest that you'd like to review articles. They would also be happy in forwarding it to you. Another important point is that I recorded all my reviews in a website called Publons. It's very similar to Google Scholar, but specifically for recording the articles that you have reviewed. So if you have that within the Publons, all you can do is you can just share the link so that it provides like what year, how many articles you reviewed and stuff, so it becomes easier to provide the evidence. So last but not least, the recommendation letters. So we provided two recommendation letters for the petition. One was straightforward from my PhD advisor, another being from an independent recommender. When I say an independent recommender, it's someone who has cited your work, but someone who you do not know personally, you haven't worked with, or neither is a co-author in any of your published work. So suggestions for this criteria, having an international independent recommender has more weightage, is what my lawyers had recommended me. So if you're working in the US, maybe having someone from outside the US recommending you might have more weightage. And I would suggest looking at something called Semantic Scholar. I forgot to attach the link here, but Semantic Scholar is again similar to Google Scholar and stuff. It's a great place to kind of find your citing authors based on your publication. So you would be able to list those authors who have cited you, and you would be able to get some information regarding them. For example, how many citations do they have? Like, where do they work and stuff? So it's a very important resource that helped me. And then I would suggest start reaching out to the citing authors very early in your application, because this is something which can delay your process if you're not able to find an independent recommender. So that was all about my application process. So I just wanted to share some final thoughts, where please start planning early, and then plan your application timeline. If you're an OPT, plan it in a way that you would finish the process before your OPT ends, or wait until your STEM OPT gets approved. So you have about 2 years to kind of like file the same. And then please do not underestimate yourself, and do not get scared by the term extraordinary ability for filing O1. Instead, get your profile evaluated at the earliest, in case if you find that if you do not meet the requirements, you would at least have some time to improve your profile. Last but not the least, as I mentioned previously, I applied for premium processing, where I got the decision in about 12 days. This would be really helpful if you're planning some international travel, because there might be some restrictions to travel when your application is pending. So I would definitely suggest to contact your immigration attorneys if you plan to travel when your application is pending.
Quick question, Amog.
Yeah.
From your previous slide, there was this mentioning about someone you do not know personally. Can you go over that piece one more time? Who can qualify for that?
So basically, you would have to search your citing authors. Like, if you have publications, you would go ahead and see who has cited your published work.
I see.
But they shouldn't be in your network of co-authorship.
Interesting. Okay. Thanks.
Right. No problem.
Hey, Amok, one more question. So what is the total cost actually from the start? I think you took almost 1 year, I think, right?
Folks, can we keep those questions to the end, so that we can hear from Amber, and then we can combine everybody and go into live Q&A, so that we can go one after the other instead of sporadic questions. But keep that question on. So we are going to move over to Amber's side. Wait, my start camera is not working. Okay, great. Who was that? Who was asking that question? Who asked that question to Amog? I don't know. Whoever it is.
It's me, David. Yeah.
Oh, hi, David. Okay, great. Didn't want to shut you off. We will get to your question, but we
No
did
worries. Yeah, I understand you.
hear from Amber. Thank you so much, Amok, for that. Amber, thank you so much for joining us today. The main reason why we wanted you to hop over is a couple of questions. Number one is, we've been hearing about the White House executive order on AI. What does that mean? And what is the implication of that on somebody who is either a PhD student who's working on an AI related field, or a professional who is working in some research and development or software engineering side of AI? If you can shed more light on that, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, definitely. And thanks for sharing your story, Amog. It was really, really insightful. I actually didn't know about Semantic Scholar, so I'm going to start using that in my O1 preparations as well. But yeah, the trends, the macro trends right now for O1s, for NIWs, even for EB1As are actually changing quite a bit. And they're really, really changing in a favorable way, at least in the last year, coming up into this year. We'll see what happens the year after that when we potentially change presidents. We'll have to see. But a few things have come down that have just been very, very favorable and have really opened up visa options for people in AI and adjacent fields. So also in computer engineering and other, not necessarily specifically AI fields, but STEM fields that are high skilled. So let me just go run through a quick timeline of what happened. I have my notes up here. The main things that happened first was in January of 2022, where USCIS updated its policy manual on national interest waivers. And a lot of the policy guidance in that section actually kind of applied to the O1s and the EB1s as well, where essentially USCIS was acknowledging that they should take into account these reports that the federal government put together, saying that the loss of STEM talent in the US from students who study here, get their masters, get their PhDs, and returning back home was not an acceptable loss for this country. Essentially, this report, which was from a respected government agency, made it clear that the policy guidance to Congress, to the president, to all the executive agencies should be to open up avenues to keep people with these skills who are US educated in the country. We didn't see very many updates after that policy manual guidance, although I do think that O1s at that point became a little bit easier because we could throw these national interest arguments into the petitions. But there was an official update in September of 2023, and I think it was probably just after Amog's petition was approved. So his could be approved even before this guidance, but there was official guidance in September of 2023, which really opened up the field and incorporated a lot of preferences for STEM applicants. Part of that policy manual update was USCIS to collect a bunch of data on how the O1 was being used. And we actually have some of that data now, which I'll get to in just a little bit. But then in October of 2023, just a month later, the White House issued an executive order. And an executive order has the force of law in the US. And this executive order outlined a whole strategy for the US to address AI developments. Part of that was a section on immigration. And the Biden administration was essentially telling all the federal agencies that they had to do these 6 or 7 things to ensure that the US was taking into consideration the national interest in AI development when shaping immigration policy. That was in October of 2023, so we haven't seen any necessarily official reports. We haven't seen the internal policy guidance that USCIS is using for this. But I noticed an immediate impact right after that executive order, and I think a lot of other lawyers did too, especially lawyers who are filing these cases with premium processing, where it seems like a lot of them are being approved. The report that just came out, I'll share just a couple statistics with you all. It looks like from October of 2022 to October of 2023, which is a full fiscal year for the US government, there were close to 9,500 O1 petitions that were filed, and they had a 92% approval rate, which is a really, really high approval rate. And I think that when a lot of US immigration attorneys think about the O1, they think about struggles that they've had in the past with denials and the rate of denial being pretty high. I think the rate of denial was like 40% at one point over the last few years. And I know like during the Trump administration, O1 was just not considered to be a viable option for most people. But times have really, really changed. And so if you can get like a situation like Amog where you have a really supportive boss, and that boss is willing to try the O1 for you, you should go for it. Like a 92% approval rate is really, really good. So even if your case is more on the 50-50 line, you should still get fair consideration at USCIS at this point. I think a lot of immigration attorneys aren't really like grasping the trends and willing to assess cases and move forward in light of the new trends. And just keep in mind, this is another macro trend where O1 is tied to the company. So the company lawyers are involved in the O1 assessment process. Also keep in mind, all the big firms had layoffs for their immigration attorneys. They had team restructurings. A lot of the people looking at the O1 profiles don't have a lot of experience in O1s, and they're certainly not up on all of the trends because they're so overwhelmed. But if you can get someone in your company to kind of push this forward and focus on the information that the macro trends are really good right now, and lawyers who are relying on the past few years or the past 10 years to give you your O1 assessment are probably not taking the full picture into account. Yeah, so it's a bit of a ramble. Any other questions I can answer about the AI memo?
Yeah.
Anything someone is interested in knowing?
So what I'm gathering from what you're saying is this is a good time to be in AI, and this is also a great time to
Yes.
explore O1, especially given the volatility of H1B and the 92% acceptance rate of O1. I will transfer it over to folks to ask their question, but something that I have realized in talking to immigration attorneys, building a community of 3,200 immigrants, talking to folks on clarity calls is it's one thing to have what you need. I know I see your hand funny. Give us 1 second. It's one thing to have a supporting boss. It's one thing to do the work that you need to do on your own profile. And it's a completely different thing to talk to an immigration attorney and explain your work in a way that is completely understandable to them, that you do qualify for or O1, EB1, etc. So when immigrants like us, we come to lawyers like you with a profile, what are the common mistakes we make in talking about our work, and how can we rectify those mistakes? If you can shed some light on that.
Yeah, so specific to the O1 and EB1, there are certain criteria that you have to fulfill. So first off, being familiar with those criteria and being able to present to your attorney, I think I qualify for X, Y, and Z, is really, really helpful and kind of gets the attorney in the mindset right away. First, that you're prepared and that you know what you're talking about, but also it directs their attention away from the weaker criteria that they will be thinking will tank your case. I've also found a big difference in people who put together a small written summary before they talk to the attorney versus just giving the attorney the resume and then asking for an assessment based on the resume. This is especially true in STEM fields. Like I have no STEM education. I was liberal arts all the way. And I look at some of these technical resumes and they don't mean anything. They really don't mean anything. And they have all these skills listed. I can tell that they're in a perfect format. I can tell that this person is technically proficient and probably extraordinary. But they're also written in such a way that it doesn't have any of the relevant information for immigration. Like when describing what projects you're working on or your job duties at a certain company, we, the immigration attorneys, we want to know your accomplishments and your real world impacts. We don't care what tools and technologies were used on the project or what style of team structure it had or how many people were managed necessarily. So the people who do really well getting their attorney on board have a written summary that's not like the resume, but it's kind of sorted by these criteria, and it just kind of lists in bullet point or outline format a few points under the criteria that the person thinks that they will meet.
This is great. So do the work and then take the EB1 O1 criteria and then map your resume onto it. And remember that the person reading it does not have the same background as you. They might as well be from like liberal arts backgrounds, and most USCIS officers have those, international studies type background. So I think the suggestion that you gave in creating a short summary is incredible. All right, the time we've all been waiting for, questions. Now, to make sure that everybody's questions gets answered, I would request everyone to please go to reactions and then raise your hand. And we are going to go through the list one by one, and we are going to make sure that everybody has only and only one question, because we have a lot of folks who are here. So please keep it to one question. All right, Nicole, go for it.
Thank you, Aditi. Amber, I have a quick question. I'm currently on STEM OPT, but I have 18 months more left and this is approved. But unfortunately, there was a layoff, and I also have a company that I'm an AI company that I'm raising funds for. But what I'm thinking is I want to go back to India and have the investors put in the money. But I'm a little confused. Should I continue this on STEM, or should I just stop STEM, go back to India, raise, and then apply for an O1 and come back?
Yeah, that can be tricky. I do think that there will be some rules passed in sometime in the next few months concerning AI startups, because that was part of the executive order. We just don't know what those rules are going to look like yet. And I think that's what would primarily benefit you. It's tricky. I don't know if you're really gaining anything from a US immigration perspective by staying in the US and finishing your STEM. It's just that the STEM is probably the only way you can work in the US right now. So if you go back to India and do the fundraising and the startup activities there, you probably won't be able to come back and forth at all. Yeah, I don't know if I have a clear answer.
Yes, but raising money on STEM OPT would be unauthorized F1, right? It could potentially be I could get an RFE, right? Because STEM would require like an employer-employee relation and stuff like that.
So this depends. It's actually a really tricky question, and I would recommend you do a consultation either with me or another immigration attorney to
Mhm.
understand where that line is. It's a very, very gray area. The activities you can do while on F1 and doing a startup versus the activities that are considered unauthorized work.
All right, no worries. I'll follow up with you. Thank you.
Awesome. Women in Canada, women in AI Canada, go for it.
Sorry, my name is Frincy. So as the name suggested, like I have a community that I volunteer for, which is called Women in AI, and I have quite a bit of work done in the past 3-4 years under that. I work as a an AI as a principal data scientist. So my question is regarding finding the niche for EB1. So my master's was revolved around computer vision. My work is related to more like predictive analytics, which is a different part in AI, like the different section in AI, which I didn't use much of the computer vision. And I also have a lot of work done in the volunteering thing and have a lot of awards and stuff and speaking opportunities in that. So do we combine all this when we create the profile, or only pick those where it can, because my I have one publication and judging criteria, but that's all under the computer vision, which is not my primary work. So it's a bit of tricky situation, like where do I stand to find the niche?
Yeah, so developing a niche is a little bit tricky because you want to get narrow enough where you can show that you are really at the top of that narrow niche. But you also need to be broad enough that it encompasses all of the best qualities of your professional profile. And don't worry too much about getting too niche. I think a normal USCIS officer would think AI is a strong niche. And normally when I file the AI petitions, I try to pick something that's a little bit more specific within AI. But it can be generic, general AI, and you can still get the petition approved. Also, USCIS is not going to know the difference between computer vision and the other aspects of your career. To a USCIS officer, this is probably going to be like all the same thing. So we just need to figure out how we can present a field that does encompass all the aspects of your career that is accurate. But don't worry too much about defining the niche there.
The volunteering thing, would that can be added, like, so because a person who's working in the field but also contributing a lot on the community side, can it be like in the profile itself?
Yes, there are a lot of activities that can qualify under the criteria that are more community related and not necessarily technical work in the field.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much.
All right, Sunil, go for it.
Yeah, thank you so much. So my question is regarding the NIW. Like in EB1A, we have minimum 3 criteria to meet, and we know if we don't meet the criteria, we are not even ready to apply. But in case of NIW, we don't have a specific number of criteria to meet. We don't know whether we are ready to go to the lawyer or not. So when is the situation, or like what are the things we need to meet to understand whether we should go with the NIW or not?
Yeah, so the NIW is really vague and very, very discretionary. I think that's intentional in the law, where they don't provide a strong framework or a list of criteria for you to use. Keep in mind, right now, NIW is super favorable. The report kit that came out that I referenced for the O1 data, I have the NIW data as well, and it looks like they had 40,000 national interest waivers that were filed over the last fiscal year, and 90% of the STEM filings were approved. If you think you have any chance at NIW, I would recommend talking to a few different attorneys and kind of assessing things and getting quotes. Keep in mind, though, for NIW, having a broader professional participation that shows your impact on the field or industry as a whole is really helpful, especially if you aren't super senior level within your organization. But that's my main advice there.
Thank you.
Awesome. David, go for it.
Hey, Amber. So what's the cost we are looking for, the total cost, like from applying? There'll be a lot of things will be there, right? Immigration cost, UCS cost, and everything.
Yeah, it's a good question. So for the O1s, they are employer sponsored. So the employer has to sign off on the paperwork, but there's not a similar requirement that the employer has to pay for everything. So, I mean, in my opinion, the company should pay. But if you're really trying to convince your company to file the O1 for you, you can offer to pay. The price range you should probably be looking at is very broad. It's probably 5,000 to 12,000. And that's total costs, and that's probably including premium processing. And I know that's super, super broad. You'll probably have to get quotes from a bunch of different attorneys and see if your company's attorney offers the discount going through them. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you. So following up with that, so we have
David, we need, can you come back with that question, because we have 7 more folks.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Subramanian, go for it.
Thank you. I have a question for Amber. So I just heard you saying that like the O1 would be company sponsored visa. So what if we want to change the company in the later stage after having O1? Would the O1 be valid, or we should be applying it again, or how is it work?
Yeah, transfer rules for the O1 aren't quite as favorable as they are for the H1B, but USCIS is still supposed to apply this policy of deference to prior approvals. So once you have the first O1 approved, you should get the second one approved. I probably would not recommend leaving the original company before your new O1 is approved, unless you have like a solid career plan or backup plan just in case it falls through. Plan for it to fail, but it should go through. The vast majority of the new employer or change of employer O1s are approved. We'll see if this changes in the future, if the presidency changes. Last time they tried to get rid of the policy of deference. I hope they don't try to do that again. We'll see where that goes. But yeah, it's usually pretty easy to transfer the O1. Not too difficult.
Yeah. Thank you.
Abdulaziz, go for it.
Thank you. I'm a student from Uzbekistan. I'm doing my bachelor's and I'm on 3rd year right now. And my plan is to get a permanent residence in the US. So I have like 3 options right now to do masters. And also I'm doing my bachelor's in AI and machine learning field. So the first option is to do masters, which would probably qualify me to get EB2 and then apply for permanent residence. Or should I just proceed with the Like after college, should I just find a job and just keep working on EB3? And also, I have a third option of just marrying my American girlfriend. So, which one do you think would be the fastest way and the easiest way to obtain permanent residence?
Sure. So marriage is always the fastest and easiest. That doesn't mean you should do it. You have to be really sure that it's the person you want to marry, because marrying the wrong person can ruin your life far more than any kind of immigration consequence. But it's always the fastest and easiest if you know that you want to marry your partner anyways. Second fastest is probably going to be finding an employer post-bachelor's that will sponsor you for the green card right away and is not going through layoffs. So maybe not one of the big tech companies that says they're going to lay off consistently this year, but find a company that's going to sponsor you right away that seems relatively stable. And that process will probably take you about 2.5 years, given your country of birth. Then you could do the master's and then the NIW. Doing the master's is probably going to take you 1 or 2 years, and then getting the green card through the NIW program is also probably going to take another 1 to 2 years because there's a little bit of a backlog. Doing the master's now, though, and counting on the NIW policies being as favorable as they are now might carry some risk because we don't know what's going to happen with those policies. Yeah, hopefully that helps. It's not necessarily a straight answer. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Let me go for it.
Hey, thanks a lot for the session, man. So just a quick question. I'm kind of confused between the NIW and EB1A, which one to take forward, because like I have a master's with 10 years of experience as a data architect on the data side. I'm not on the AI side yet, but and I have an EB2 with 2015 as a priority date. So I'm kind of stuck in that lane for a very long time. And so the thing is, like, I'm just confused, like, is it a good to get an NIW at this point of time? Because being dependent on the employer is kind of scary, and kind of like you're kind of getting stagnant with the professional growth as well because of the dependency. So, like, do you think like building an EB1A profile would be beneficial? But the thing is, like, just having a master's and I'm not on the research side of things, I'm kind of confused, like, how to, like, which one would be a best suited for my use case.
Yeah, you were born in India? Okay. So what I will say will probably just apply to the people on the call that were born in India, because the backlog for EB2 in India is so long. But having the 2015 priority date is pretty good. I don't know exactly when you can expect your green card. I'm hoping it's sometime in the next 10 years. And I know that probably sounds way too long, but you know, it's a really broad time estimate. So the main benefit of EB2 NIW for anyone who already has their priority date and is born in India and is just waiting is a little bit of flexibility and independence from the employer. It's not everything. It just provides a little bit. I do totally recommend it to anyone as long as they're willing to put in the investment and actually push it forward. It's not a necessity. What it helps with, though, is it helps with the job transition whenever you want to find a new employer, because it's very easy to transfer an H-1B or another non-immigrant visa like the O-1. But it's very difficult right now to get the new employer to put you in the perm process and then proceed to get you that approved I-140, so that if we have a situation like in 2020 where the priority dates accelerated very rapidly, you know that you're in good shape to take advantage of that and actually apply for your green card. So, I mean, there's the peace of mind, having some flexibility from your employer, and then there's also the situation for avoiding what happened in 2020 where some people born in India were not able to take advantage of the advancement in priority dates because they had changed employers the year prior, their perm process was still stuck, and so they're still waiting. That's about it.
Awesome.
And EB1 is great. I'll say EB1 is great. If you want to pursue it, you should. It's going to be a lot of work, though, and that shouldn't be underestimated.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. HD, go for it.
Hey, thanks, Aditi. So I have a question on impact of this AI executive order on EB1. So I have some conferences, papers, and a book related to AI. I don't have a PhD. I've worked on my profile, and I'm about to apply very soon. So the question is that if it is going to impact EB1, which of the criterias would be impacted, or will it going to impact like overall merit of the application, and how to pitch it in the most effective manner so that it strengthens my case?
Yeah, so the executive order says that the immigration agencies are supposed to revisit their policies on EB1 in relation to AI. But it also provides a time frame, and we're still not quite done or outside of that time frame yet. So I don't know if the agencies have anything official. I do know that I've been citing that executive order in the EB1s, and it seems to help them go a little bit smoother. You still have to prove all of the criteria in all of the normal ways. You can just use the executive order to kind of put a focus or a spin on the argument or how USCIS should look at it. So for example, original contributions. Normally, original contributions, when USCIS looks at this criterion, they want to see that other people have cited your articles hundreds of times. They want to see that your original contribution has had huge and widespread impact in the industry. But if you put this in the context of AI and show that your original contribution is of major significance because it's part of this emerging field, where it doesn't have hundreds of citations yet, but it does have maybe 12 citations from these super important groups who are doing these super cool things, it can help contextualize it a lot better. And I do recommend doing that as much as possible. The context really matters in EB1s.
Got it. Thanks.
Well, Neha, go for it.
Yeah, so my question is for Amog actually. How did you decide between whether you wanted to go for EB1 and O1, like versus O1? Like, what were your deciding criteria? Was it the time for approval, profile, cost, or if you had anything else?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So just to follow up, do you mean H1B versus O1, or do you mean O1 versus EB1?
O1 versus EB1.
Right. So Owen, so you do need a visa to be there in the US before you start applying for the immigrant visa, right? So I do have plans of applying for EB1 in the future,
Okay.
but you at least need a visa to stay in the
Okay.
US until your process gets completed. So you
Right.
should
So
have some
basically,
non-immigrant visas. Yeah.
okay, so basically to avoid the, like, just to say, to avoid the H1B lottery, going for the O1 route was kind of easier with your profile. Is that
Yes.
the correct way to
Yes,
put it?
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no problem.
Awesome, Gurusha.
Thank you, Aditi, for having this session. Thank you, Amok, for sharing your experiences, and thank you, Amber, for helping us all out with like really insightful comments. So, I do not come from an engineering background. I'm currently doing a STEM master's, and I'm graduating in June. Now, the thing is that previously, I'm just trying to share a little bit of my work experience. Previously, I've worked at Deloitte, but I was in marketing field, and coming here in US, I pivoted my role into the UX side of the thing or the tech side of the thing. Now I'm trying to understand what options do I have. And recently I also interned at TEDx MIT. I'm big time into AI, but I don't know, like, because I don't have research papers, or I don't have like things that PhD students do. So how can I best market my profile?
Yeah, I'll provide just a couple of tips.
Mhm.
So you probably can't use the past marketing experience in a future high-skilled immigrant application like the O1 or the NIW or the EB1. But your master's degree should set you up well, at least as a basis for starting for one of those petitions anyways.
Mhm.
I would recommend that you join professional associations in the UX, in the high-tech fields, so that you have opportunities to build your profile there. It doesn't really matter if you haven't published papers. It's not a requirement. It definitely is good if you publish papers. So if it's something that's on your to-do list, go ahead and pursue it. But you can also just focus in on broader industry participation in other avenues instead of publishing.
Okay. I'm just curious, what did you mean by broader industry?
Yeah. So for applications like NIW or even O1, if you get a membership in an organization and you kind of get into a higher level membership, like on a committee or as part of a board or something like that, it always looks good for these petitions. If you network through these opportunities and you get nominated for an award, that's always really good. If you are part of media outreach or public relations for these organizations, you can sometimes get your name out in the media. Like these organizations are often the platform or the stepping stone for doing all of the things that will then later qualify for the O1 or EB1 criteria. And then if you're really active in a couple associations, you might be able to apply for the EB2 and IW right away, right after graduation, because sometimes that's enough to prove your professional impact.
Okay, got it. Perfect. Thank you so much.
So we are like right at the cusp of 1 p.m. and we have 3 more questions. So let's keep them super, super short. Herrick, go for it.
Hi, thank you. My question is to Amber. I currently work for an AI startup which uses AI and computer vision and geospatial analytics. And I'm planning to apply for EB2 NIW. And once the NIW is approved, can I switch to a different domain, applying AI, computer vision, or NLP, say in self-driving car domain or healthcare domain? Will that cause any issue in the national interest of NIW?
So this all depends on how you present your proposed endeavor. If you tell USCIS that you're going to do this very specific thing, and then you're not doing the specific thing by the time you apply for your green card, then there's going to be a mismatch and it could be questioned. And you might not be able to use that EB2 NIW to get your green card after all. But if you present your proposed endeavor more broadly, saying that you intend to advance the field of AI, doing this, this, and that, you should be able to draft it broadly enough where you're encompassing a wide range of activities and positions in the industry and can still take that with you and eventually use it to get the green card.
Okay, thanks.
Amrita, go for it.
Hi, my question is to Amber. Thank you so much for doing this, Aditi, Amber, and Amok. Can I assume or can I ask an EB1 specialized attorney to take up a case for or see if am I eligible for a U visa? I'm not going to go into the details, but I'm just asking you, are there any specialized attorneys for U visa, or all the EB1 or immigration attorneys are also qualified to do U visa? Thank you.
Yeah, so an attorney can file it, definitely. If you came to me with the U visa, I would say no, because I've never filed a U visa case before. I would probably choose a firm that has experience in U visas, and they should advertise that on their website if they do. Most EB1 attorneys will not have the U visa experience, so you might not work with exactly the same attorney, but if it's within the same general firm, you can at least get that continuity of service.
Is there any timeline for like getting a new visa? Do you have the like approximate
So
timeline?
long. It's so long. That's all I know.
Got it.
Yeah, the whole process. I think the police take a long time, and then USCIS takes a long time. I'd be surprised if it was in more or less than 2 years. But you should talk to a specialist about it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Akshay, Arpita, unfortunately, we are right at the cusp of time, so we're not taking any new questions, but Akshay, go for it, and then I'll request Amber and Amog, if you can just stick around for one last question. Arpita is going to be the last one. Please don't raise your hands after that. Akshay, go for it.
Yeah, hey Amber, I have a question for you. So I want to understand if data analytics considered under the AI umbrella, because a lot of things are, and I'm not sure. So what my question is, I have worked on creating several data analytics reports and dashboards for a company that I work for, whose mission statement is to save lives and protect property. And by doing so, it has helped the company to save and automate a lot of processes and like get rid of a lot of employees that has allowed them to stay in business and help in the revenue side. So I'm not sure. Would that be considered a good strategy?
It could. I kind of go through these preference lists where I think AI is the hottest trend, data science is maybe slightly under, data analytics is probably underneath. So data analytics is probably not on par with AI, but it's still STEM and it still is a hot topic at USCIS. So I would encourage you to get this assessed a little bit more because there is some
Okay.
promise there. It's just not quite as strong as the AI cases we were talking about.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Arpita, you're the last one.
Yeah, thank you, Aditi. Sorry, I just got to one question. So the question that I have is EB2 NIW, right? So that just gets rid of the perm process, but it doesn't fast track, or being an Indian, I would still be backlogged in the line. Is my understanding correct?
Yes, that is correct, unfortunately. There's a lot of misconceptions out there right now about how EB2 NIW can get you an EAD or fast track your green card process. I'm not really sure where the ideas came from, but like I mentioned earlier, really the only benefit to people who were born in India is having a little bit more independence and flexibility when it comes to the job search, and then like not being caught in that situation in 2020 where if your priority date becomes current, you have to wait for the perm process. That's about it.
Wow.
Also,
Thank you so much.
I should,
Thank you, Aditi, as well.
of course. I should add something that Amber just put on LinkedIn for EB2 NIW, and she said that, oh, we don't talk about this enough, that when you do get your EB2 NIW, your spouse gets work authorization. Is that right, Amber?